Okay, everyone that's joining us, we're going to get started in just another minute. Thank you all for hopping on our webinar about the Renewable Energy Mitigation Program. Okay, it is 5:32, so I think we will go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today for our presentation about the proposed Renewable Energy Mitigation Program. I'm going to pass it over to Mark Truckee, the Community Development Director for Town of Breckenridge, to kind of introduce us to what we're talking about today.
Thanks, Teddy. Welcome everyone that's attending. Appreciate your participation here today. We're going to try to keep this relatively short. We have a presentation here that'll be maybe 10-15 minutes, and then we really just want to do some question and answers with you. And if you have some things that are really more detailed and in the weeds, we certainly can follow up with you offline after this as well, and we'll get your contact information if we don't have it. But once again, as Teddy said, I'm Mark Truckee. I'm the Community Development Director here at the Town of Breckenridge. On this screen along with me, there'll be some other faces, some that may be familiar, some not. Jessie Burley, she's a Town Sustainability Coordinator. We have Jess Hoover, and she is a Climate Action Director for High Country Conservation Center, our great nonprofit partner here and all things related to energy and sustainability. Teddy Wilkinson, who introduced us to the discussion just a minute ago, and he is the Sustainability Mobility Administrator. Is that it, Teddy?
Got it.
Thank you. And then Julia Puster is also with us, and she's the Assistant Director of Community Development here at the Town of Breck. So just moving on from that, the Town of Breckenridge, we have adopted several plans that directly address the issue that we're going to talk about today. The Sustainable Breck Plan was adopted back in 2011, and we've been implementing it ever since then with various initiatives. Some of the ones we did several years ago was set goals for moving to all renewable electric energy in the town. And in addition to that, the Summit Climate Action Plan was adopted several years ago by the Town of Breck, Frisco, Summit County. A number of the jurisdictions here in the county adopted that. And there's some pretty aggressive goals in there about reducing emissions 50% by the year 2030 and up to 80% by the year 2050. And so we have some policies that I know that our town council very much supports in terms of reducing our emissions in the town and moving towards a cleaner future in terms of energy and reducing our carbon footprint and addressing climate change as we see it happening here. This slide just talks about the amount of energy use that comes from town's greenhouse gas emissions. You know, most of it is accounted for with greenhouse gas emissions. We currently have programs that regulate energy use indoors via our building codes and energy efficiency programs, and we just adopted some new ones in the last couple of years, like zero energy ready homes, which really are advancing the ball on use of energy indoors. And we're continuing to kind of fine tune those programs as well. But right now, there's currently no mandatory programs for outdoor energy use, whether it's heated driveways, hot tubs, pools, gas fire pits, all that kind of thing. We don't regulate it. Our code, our development code here at the town of Breckenridge does have a point system where we give negative points for heated space and positive points for doing other things to offset it, but we don't have a requirement that it has to be addressed. So anyway, that's a little bit of background. Another issue that's come up relatively recently is Xcel Energy has actually told us that they've got some real limitations on expanding natural gas infrastructure in Summit County. And so they're actively working on programs to move away from additional natural gas and try to move towards beneficial electrification. We have the town itself on the last 3 housing projects that we've undertaken have gone to no natural gas whatsoever. We're not bringing natural gas to the site. We're going to total electric system in terms of heating and everything, and using more advanced systems than the old electric heating systems that were, in place years ago. These are much more efficient. So the issue, just in 2 years ago in 2019, about 10,000 square feet of heated snowmelt was installed. The numbers here on the screen, I'm not sure if they're partly covered up by our faces here. If they are, I apologize, but basically that alone, the 10,000 square feet, translates into 37% of the size of one of the solar gardens to offset that additional heated space that was created outdoors. So that solar garden, for example, out at on the McKean property north of town, 37% of that would be needed just to offset that use for just 1 year. We've received some recognition for being a sustainable tourist destination certified through the Mountain Ideal program. And we've also received recognition as one of the top 100 global sustainable destinations for the amount of efforts we've taken on sustainability in any number of fronts. But one of the things when we were audited, because this is all audited by a third party in terms of coming up with a recommendation that we are a sustainable destination, one of the things that was identified was the outdoor energy use, both with snowmaking and then with snowmelt, and that we really need to work on that as something in the future that the town needs to be looking at. And we were obviously already aware of this, but this just kind of heightened our recognition of the issue. So our outdoor energy goals that we'll be talking about, and Jesse's going to be taking you through it in a little more specifics here in a minute. Really, it's about creating economic price signals. So hopefully people will reduce the amount of outdoor energy use they propose in the beginning. But if they do choose to do some things, heated driveways, things like that, you're going to need to offset it, either by offsetting it on site by adding solar or some other type of renewable, or by contributing money into a fund that then is used to fund any number of renewable projects throughout the town. So Jesse will give you a little more details on that. And then finally, I just wanted to note that, and this is where I'll kind of hand it off to Jesse, but this type of program that we're talking about is in place in a number of communities throughout the state already. Probably foremost in Eagle County and Pitkin County have had these programs in place for a number of years, and they've worked fairly successfully there, at least from the perspective of the leaders in those communities and the sustainability experts that are there. So With that, I'm going to hand it off to Jesse to get into a little more of the specifics. Thanks for attending.
Thank you all for being here tonight and for being flexible on the venue. I'm going to walk us through a little bit of the background on how we got here today and dive a little bit more into the details. We will, again, for those of you jumping on late, have Q&A until about 6:30 tonight, and then we'll also post in the chat an email where you can continue to submit comments as council considers this recommendation. So as Mark mentioned, renewable energy mitigation programs do work. Pitkin County's has been in place for almost 2 decades, if not maybe going on a little bit more than that. And they have seen over those years, particularly with solar prices dropping and the continuation of solar credits through the federal government, that architects and developers are both mitigating more and also installing less outdoor appliances that consume and heat the outdoors. So they have seen this work. This isn't just kind of another proposal, trying to address climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. This actually does do its job, and that is to reduce outdoor heating. In terms of developing this program, many of you have probably either been a part of or at least been apprised of the Sustainable Building Code process. It was an 18-month stakeholder process between really all of the local jurisdictions, building officials, and then the industry professionals, contractors, designers. And through that process, a lot of the questions that kept coming up were, okay, great, our codes are pretty good. What about outdoor energy use? What are we going to do to tackle, the large spas and the heated driveways and things like that, because those are consuming a lot of energy as well. And so a subgroup was formed from the Sustainable Building Code group, and you can see some of the participants here on the screen, but there were builders represented, large and small businesses, designers and architects, energy professionals and home performance contractors, and then of course our local governments. And so this wasn't just town staff coming up with this idea, but rather a good cross-section of industry professionals that were also concerned about heating of the outdoors. And so from that group, we have some committee recommendations that we are taking to council on Tuesday, the 25th of this month. Council did get a high-level overview of the REMP program back in July, where they gave the thumbs up to finish out the stakeholder process, fine-tune some of this information, go out to the public and get some feedback, and then come back with recommendations. And that's where we are today. So in terms of who does this impact, we are looking at residential and commercial requirements. They are slightly different amongst the two. So for residential, you're looking at regulation of hot tubs above 64 square feet. So your typical single family home hot tub is an 8x8. And anything less than that would be exempt under this program. Anything larger than that would start to incur the mitigation requirements. Pools with no exemptions, snow melt systems. So these are heated driveways, walkways, starting to see outdoor kitchens, things like that, patio spaces. And then fire pits and heat tape, which are asterisked here because these are elements that have not been common in other programs thus far. But as we learn more and more about the greenhouse gas emissions and the energy intensity of these systems, fire pits and heat tape have been flagged for potential future inclusion. So they are included in our program here to the extent that we are recommending, the committee is recommending that fire pits be offset at a lower amount, perhaps something like 10–15%, and that heat tape does not require mitigation, but rather requires some timers and controls. On the commercial side, we are looking at hot tubs, pools, snow melt systems, fire pits, and radiant heaters in this case also require timers. And then down here at the bottom, I just want to make sure that I covered everything. The recommendation by the committee is that all energy is mitigated on site. We have identified some larger commercial projects where the actual real estate for on-site mitigation is not available. And so we're looking at other opportunities and trying to figure out ways that we could try to enforce off-site mitigation for those larger projects. We are also recommending that 100% of the energy for hot tubs, pools, and the snowmelt systems are offset. And then again, there's some of those exemptions around heat tape and fire pits for both residential and commercial. In terms of where does this live in the code, there will be a couple places. The majority of the program will sit as an above code program in the International Residential Code and in the International Energy Conservation Code. On the commercial side, it will sit in the IECC. And then there's also a piece that Mark mentioned, and I can have Julia perhaps jump in here really quickly and talk about policy 33R, which, if you're familiar with the development code, is a relative policy, and it used to assign negative points to these types of features, but there will be amendments to that. Julia, do you want to take a second and describe that?
Sure, Jesse. Yeah, policy 33R is our energy conservation piece to our development code. And that's where we get the negative points for outdoor heated space and outdoor features that are high energy consuming. So what will happen in the policy 33 is that we'll end up striking a lot of that policy and all of it that relates to negative points for outdoor heating. And this is going to be replaced by this program. So in conjunction with building code changes for this program, you're going to see some development code changes that remove negative points in the planning piece of project review.
Great, thank you. So this is a lot of information and I don't expect to go through line by line, but a lot of folks have been interested in what does the calculator actually look like and what kind of information is taken into consideration for that. The engineering group, oh my gosh, resource engineering group, I believe it is, right, Jess? Thank you. Has been retained to help us work on these calculations, which are based primarily on the carbon and energy intensity of these systems, but then also on the current market price of installing solar PV. The calculator for Breckenridge is currently being developed by that engineering firm. And the reason why we don't have it yet is we're still trying to update it with some of those appliances that are not common in other programs, but also we need to adjust the calculations and assumptions for Breckenridge weather files to make sure that we're actually building in the right assumptions for our region. So more to come on this. We do expect it to be available at the end of this month, and we will provide that for review and for public feedback as well, but we do not have that currently at the moment. If we do want to get into details with this in the Q&A, Jess Hoover is here and can help walk us through this. And August has with the engineering group will be at the council meeting on Tuesday to help answer even more in-depth questions about this. So just wanted to show you guys a little bit about the information that is being calculated. So in terms of timeline and next steps, which is really what everyone wants to know, as I mentioned, council did get a high-level overview of this at their July 13th meeting last year. They did give the thumbs up for staff to move forward and bring back recommendations and a policy proposal. That's where we are now. We will be taking this to the work session on Tuesday. Work sessions typically do not allow for public comment. And so it's really a discussion between staff and the council. The council will receive summaries of all the comments that we've received up till this point, and including tonight's Q&A, and they will get that tomorrow before the council meeting. And then moving forward, we would need to bring a legislative proposal and ordinance back for first reading and then second reading, which are two separate meetings. And both of those have public hearings where the public can speak either for or against the proposal. So those have not been scheduled yet, but we're looking at taking those to council in February. And Teddy's going to post in the chat some links to make sure that you know where to go to find those agendas for once those are scheduled. You know, the climate challenge and the work that the town of Breckenridge is doing in this space is not going to stop. So this is a program that we think we can get up and running pretty quickly. Should council, you know, give their approval. This slide says final adoption in February 2022. I suspect it might be a little later than that, and then implementation would begin shortly thereafter. So just wanted to be clear on what the process was for everybody in case there were some questions around that. And you can still submit comments at sustainablebrec@townofbreckenridge.com. You can visit the Sustainable Breck website where we are keeping blogs and kind of the up-to-date recommendations and other information about this program. And then the bottom link is a link to the town council meetings and agenda packets for your information. So I'll leave this up here for just another minute and then I'll close down my screen share and we can jump into Q&A and we'll take questions until about 6:30. Please do type them in the Q&A function and Teddy's gonna kind of condense and summarize and pitch them to various panelists here as we wrap up the evening. So thank you guys all for being here. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing.
Awesome. Thank you, Jesse, for that presentation. That was great. So like Jesse mentioned, if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature, not the chat. I think the chat might be disabled. So please put them in the Q&A and we'll get to them. The one we've received so far is from Tyler, and Tyler asks, does this include wood burning fire pits or just gas? Jesse, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yep. So it does not include wood burning fire pits. It's actually a very simple answer right now.
All right, great. So there you go, Tyler. Let's see. Nikki, you said you had two questions, but I don't see them. I just see you just had two questions. So if you could try that again, that would be great.
While Mickey is typing those questions, one thing I didn't address, and we did get this question earlier today, is whether or not this will apply retroactively to systems that are already installed. And the answer is no, it will not. The recommendation of staff is that it will only apply to new systems or systems that are expanding their square footage. So if you have 1,000 square feet installed today and you're looking at putting in another 500, that 500 would be subject to this, not the original 1,000. So that's the current proposal on the table right now.
Yeah, that's great. I know people have asked that a bit. Okay, Mickey has got his questions in here. Does boiler efficiency factor into the fee for snowmelt systems? That Jess Hoover might be the best one to help us with that question.
Yes, it does. So the more efficient your boiler is, the lower the less energy is used, the lower your fee amount is, or the less amount of solar PV you need to offset.
Great, awesome. That makes sense. And then Mickey's second question here is, where do the fees go? Like if someone pays the fee in lieu option, have you identified a fund or renewable energy projects that this money will be directly spent on?
Thanks for
Jesse?
that. As you can imagine, this fund would, the idea is that the fund would not grow ever, right? I mean, the bottom line is we are trying to prevent these systems from going in moving forward. But short of that, we know that people, it's an amenity, we live in a high alpine environment, people are going to put these in. And so the fee that's collected will come to the town. It would be a special fund. So the money is specifically dedicated for this program. And then there would be a committee of folks who would review community-wide projects. So for example, if a small business to the south of town wanted to install solar and they were unable to do so, they might be able to apply for this program and get grant funding to be able to help them do so. Economic studies from our neighboring jurisdictions that have these types of programs have shown that dollars spent in this program leverage a 6-to-1 energy efficiency. And so reinvesting those funds into the community can have an even larger impact by helping with other energy efficiency measures, not just renewable energy. It's kind of anything energy efficiency related.
Great, awesome. Okay, we have a question from Jack Derrickson. He's asks about, snow melt and heated driveways can be important for safety reasons. And, the town of Breck has installed some heated sidewalks and snow melt systems to protect pedestrians from injury. Is there anything in the REMP program that takes safety into account? He points out it feels a little punitive to require offsets for those when they're trying to protect safety.
Great, thank you. I might punt it to Mark to talk a little bit about the town stuff and really how the town has learned about the impacts of those systems over time. But the short answer is yes, there are safety exemptions built in. On the residential side, there's an automatic 100 square feet of snow melt allowed. And the idea would be that it would be in either kind of your high traffic or your kind of front entryway, although anybody could make the pitch where the safety is needed. On the commercial side, it's 100 square feet per emergency egress. So if there's 6 emergency exits identified on the building plans, you would get an automatic 600 square feet of snow melt. So that's built into the program right out of the gate. One of the policy questions that we're going to be taking to council on Tuesday is what, if any, additional safety measures might they consider? And so things that have been brought up are high pedestrian areas, like on commercial projects where the public might cross onto private property, for example, where there's a public easement. Another example is steepness of slope, right? So if all the other design measures on the site plan have been considered and you still have a really, really steep driveway that leaves it open for safety issues, the building official can consider that. So there's exemptions built in, but then there's also flexibility for safety beyond that would be at the discretion of the chief building official. So hopefully that answers the question. And then Mark, maybe you want to talk a little bit more about the town.
Oh, thanks, Jesse. Just a couple of things is, even with the old code where we had disincentives under our policy 33R in a development code, we did provide exceptions for what we called high traffic pedestrian areas. And so that's one of the things that we'll be talking about with the council next week, is if they want to provide that exception again at some level. A couple of examples of it. Obviously, the one a lot of people have talked about is the new parking structure in the plaza out in front of there that's heated. Well, it's definitely a high pedestrian area. Another example of that, though, too, on a private scale, is up at the gondola, where you've got the One Ski Hill Place and then BGB's development up there. You got the walkway going from the gondola to the lifts. That whole area was exempted as well. Same thing, when you've got a lot of people moving through an area, it becomes even more important to look at that issue carefully in terms of exemptions.
Great. And Jack had a second part of his question, which is, are there minimum allowable energy use levels before offsets are required under this program?
So the short answer is no. You could say that the square footage exemptions kind of would allow for that as well, but it's not like you get 1,000 square feet of snow melt and then you're subject. The caveats there would be on hot tub size. So there is 64 square feet exempted on residential hot tubs. Anything above that would be subject. So there's a couple of nuances there. The other thing is that, again, as staff, we are trying to present this proposal in the light of our climate action plan, which is really our work plan and the desires of council. And so this plan is being recommended at 100% offset. Now the council might choose to offset at a lower amount. And so that kind of plays into this question too. So for example, maybe they consider only a 50% offset, in which case you would get the other 50% for free, so to speak. So that's kind of where the politics of the program come in, but we are recommending 100% offset at this time.
Great. Well, that is all the questions we have received so far. If anyone else on the call thinks of a question, please pop it in there in the next minute or so. And while we wait for that, Jesse, do you just kind of want to review what the next steps are again? I know kind of your last slide talked about that. You said we have a presentation to town council coming up on Tuesday at a work session. And where else might this program go from there?
Perfect. Thanks for that, Teddy. Can you guys see this slide again? Great. So, as I mentioned, Tuesday is the work session, and forgive me, I actually have not seen the start time. Mark or Julia, do you know the start time? Typically they start at 3, but they've been a little different lately.
I think it's likely to start more towards 4 from what I've heard.
Okay. And this is already slated to be towards the end of that agenda. So, we're probably looking at about 5:30 or 6 before this presentation is done. It is a work session. So that means, again, we're presenting the recommendations to council. We'll get their feedback, some policy direction. And then we will go back and draft an ordinance. I know a lot of folks have been really wanting to see 2 documents in particular. One, the calculator that we keep referencing, which is still under development and we should have by the end of the month. And the second is draft ordinance language, which we will also have following that policy discussion with council on the 25th. In terms of public hearings and first readings on those ordinances, we are hoping to have those in February. Council meetings are the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of every month. So, and on my calendar in front of me, but you can look that up. And at that time, during the regular meeting, the mayor will ask for public comment. And so that's another opportunity, once again, to speak directly with council. And so then once an ordinance is adopted, it typically has, Mark, correct me, 35 days before it goes into effect, typically. Cool. So whenever that second reading is, 35 days from then would be when we're looking to fully implement the program, unless we write in some other date to the ordinance.
Great. I did get one follow-up question from Jack. He asks if someone is going to install more than 100 square feet of snow melt or upgrade to a larger hot tub, will they be required to offset that with a solar PV system?
So this is where the choice in the program is built in. So yes, they will be required to do something. The choice is between mitigating with a renewable energy system. So while the cost basis for the program is based on solar PV, you can install a ground source heat pump. We're also looking at air source heat pumps in the calculator. Anything that's allowed by code that's considered a renewable energy system could be installed, but the cost basis is for PV because that is by far the most economical. And it's also the type of system where federal solar tax credits still apply. So you can get an additional benefit from the federal government for installing solar PV. If you choose not to do that, then the payment in lieu would go into effect. And I should mention that there might be projects where a homeowner or developer might choose to split the difference. So maybe you put 5 kW, 15 kW of solar PV on your roof, and then you pay the remainder into the special fund. So there is flexibility built in, but to answer the initial question, yes, anything above those exempted amounts would be subject to the calculations.
Great. Okay. Well, I do not see any additional new questions, so I think we've wrapped up our Q&A portion here. Thank you, Jesse, Jess, Mark, Julia, for kind of walking us through the REMP program and kind of what it looks like and where it's heading. And Jesse, do you have any closing remarks you want to leave us with before we end the call?
No, just want to say thank you to this panel and all the work that's gone into this, and to the stakeholders and to the public who have made very significant contributions to the discussion. We really appreciate that participation. I know one council member is on the call today, so she has now heard the background discussion on this. So, we're really just looking forward to meeting the council's goals on greenhouse gas emissions reductions, and it's going to take some really significant, bold policy to get us there. And so we look forward to the discussion with council on Tuesday.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. And everyone have a great night.
Julia.
Jesse, will you be posting this on our website?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Recording to this will be posted to the both Town of Breckenridge website and the Sustainable Breck website, and probably HC3 if I had to guess.
Thanks.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.